Welcome back to the Crypto Strategist, your trusted source for the biggest crypto updates, XRP news, blockchain insights, and market analysis. Today's story is one that has the entire XRP community paying close attention because what you're about to hear could have major implications for the future of digital assets in the United States and around the world. According to comments reported by CoinDesk, a BlackRock insider described the chances of the Clarity Act passing this year as being below 50%. That statement alone has sparked intense discussion across the crypto industry, but the story doesn't stop there. The same insider also pointed to growing momentum in Asia, suggesting that governments there are prepared to move ahead with their own regulatory frameworks if Washington continues to delay. That creates a fascinating situation where global crypto adoption may continue moving forward regardless of what happens in the United States. Stay with us because every part of this story connects to XRP in ways many investors may not have considered before, and by the end of this video, you'll have a much clearer understanding of why this development is attracting so much attention. Before we continue, remember that this video is for educational and informational purposes only, and should not be considered financial advice. Always do your own research before making investment decisions because cryptocurrency remains a highly volatile market. Now, one of the biggest reasons this story has captured so much attention is because these comments reportedly came from a BlackRock employee speaking publicly to CoinDesk, rather than from anonymous online rumors or social media speculation. Whenever someone connected to one of the world's largest asset managers discusses crypto regulation, people naturally pay attention. The statement wasn't simply about whether a bill may or may not pass. Instead, it focused on the broader direction of digital asset regulation and how different regions of the world are preparing for the future. That shift in perspective is incredibly important because it reminds investors that crypto is a global industry, not one controlled by any single government or regulator. To really understand why this matters, we first need to understand what the Clarity Act is designed to accomplish. For years, one of the biggest challenges facing the digital asset industry has been regulatory uncertainty. Companies, developers, financial institutions, and investors have all struggled with overlapping oversight and changing interpretations from different government agencies. The Clarity Act is intended to establish clearer legal definitions for digital assets and determine how different cryptocurrencies should be regulated under federal law. Instead of leaving important questions unanswered, legislation like this aims to create a stable framework that businesses can rely on for years to come. That kind of certainty could encourage more institutional participation, greater innovation, and stronger investment across the blockchain industry. Whether someone supports or opposes the bill, most people agree that clearer rules would reduce confusion throughout the market. One of the most interesting points raised in the reported comments was the distinction between formal legislation and regulatory rulemaking. This difference may sound technical at first, but it has major consequences for investors. Regulatory agencies like the SEC and the CFTC can introduce rules that guide how markets operate, but those rules can often be revised or replaced by future administrations. Laws passed by Congress, however, generally provide much greater stability because changing legislation typically requires another act of Congress. That creates a stronger long-term foundation for businesses planning investments that may stretch across 5 or even 10 years. Institutional investors often value predictability above almost everything else. When billions of dollars are involved, having confidence that regulations won't suddenly change becomes extremely important, and that's one reason why legislation carries so much weight within financial markets. The BlackRock insider reportedly suggested that while there is still a path for the Clarity Act to pass later this year, confidence has declined significantly. According to those comments, timing could become a critical factor, especially if Congress fails to act before important legislative breaks. Delays don't necessarily mean the bill is dead, but they do introduce more uncertainty into an industry that has already dealt with years of regulatory questions. Every additional month without clear legislation leaves businesses wondering what the future may look like. Companies deciding where to build blockchain infrastructure, launch products, or establish headquarters may eventually look toward regions offering greater legal certainty. That possibility is exactly why many observers believe this discussion extends far beyond politics and reaches directly into global economic competition. Perhaps the biggest surprise from the reported interview was the emphasis on Asia's growing role in digital asset regulation. The insider reportedly mentioned multiple trips to places including South Korea and Hong Kong over recent months, suggesting that governments there are actively working to position themselves for the next phase of blockchain innovation. If the United States delays comprehensive legislation, other countries may choose not to wait. Instead, They could implement their own regulatory frameworks designed to attract blockchain companies, institutional capital, and technological development. This isn't simply about passing laws. It's about competing for leadership in an emerging industry that many believe will play a major role in the future of global finance. The race to establish crypto-friendly regulations has already begun, and every region wants to secure its position. This brings us directly to XRP because regulatory clarity has long been one of the most discussed topics surrounding the asset. Many XRP supporters believe that clearer legal frameworks could remove lingering uncertainty and allow broader institutional adoption. Whether that expectation ultimately proves accurate remains to be seen, but there is little doubt that regulatory developments have consistently influenced market sentiment. Investors watch every headline, every court filing, every legislative proposal, and every official statement because regulations often shape how financial institutions approach digital assets. Even when no immediate changes occur, simply moving toward greater legal certainty can influence confidence across the broader cryptocurrency market. That's why stories like today's receive so much attention within the XRP community. Another important aspect worth considering is why large financial institutions continue monitoring these developments so closely. Firms managing trillions of dollars don't make long-term strategic decisions based solely on short-term price movements. Instead, they focus on legal frameworks, operational risks, compliance requirements, and regulatory stability. Before expanding exposure to emerging technologies, institutions want confidence that the rules governing those investments are clearly defined. That doesn't necessarily mean they require perfect certainty, but they do want predictable standards that reduce unnecessary legal risks. As blockchain technology continues evolving, regulatory clarity becomes one of the key factors determining how quickly institutional adoption can accelerate. Whether discussing XRP, tokenized assets, or broader blockchain infrastructure, legal certainty remains a recurring theme. Many viewers have also been asking why banks appear hesitant about certain crypto legislation. The reality is far more complex than simple opposition or support. Traditional financial institutions must operate within highly regulated environments and carefully manage compliance obligations. Significant changes to digital asset legislation could reshape competitive dynamics, create new business opportunities, and alter existing financial systems. Some institutions may welcome innovation, while others may move more cautiously, depending on their business models and regulatory responsibilities. It's important not to oversimplify these relationships because financial markets rarely operate in absolute terms. Instead, different organizations often evaluate proposed legislation through the lens of their own strategic priorities and long-term objectives. One point often overlooked in conversations like this is that blockchain technology itself continues advancing, regardless of legislative timelines. Developers keep building new applications, payment systems continue evolving, and financial institutions continue exploring tokenization, cross-border settlement, and digital asset infrastructure. Innovation rarely pauses while lawmakers debate policy. Instead, technology frequently moves ahead, forcing regulators to adapt over time. That dynamic has played out repeatedly throughout the history of technological innovation. Whether discussing the internet, mobile communications, artificial intelligence, or blockchain, governments often find themselves responding to rapid technological change rather than directing every aspect of it from the beginning. Crypto appears to be following a similar pattern today. For long-term XRP holders, today's discussion raises interesting questions about patience and perspective. Short-term headlines often create excitement or disappointment, but experienced investors typically understand that major regulatory developments rarely happen overnight. Legislation can take months or even years to move through the political process, especially when multiple stakeholders hold differing views. Markets, however, frequently react long before final decisions are made. Expectations, speculation, and shifting probabilities can all influence price movements well ahead of actual policy changes. That's why maintaining a balanced perspective remains important. Investors should avoid making emotional decisions based solely on individual headlines while continuing to monitor broader trends shaping the industry. At the same time, global competition may become one of the defining stories of the next several years. Countries around the world recognize the potential economic benefits associated with blockchain innovation, digital payments, tokenized finance, and decentralized technologies. Governments that establish clear, balanced regulatory environments may attract startups, institutional investment, skilled professionals, and technological research. Those advantages can extend far beyond cryptocurrency markets alone. They may influence broader financial innovation, employment opportunities, and economic competitiveness. That's one reason why discussions surrounding legislation like the Clarity Act resonate internationally, rather than remaining purely domestic political issues. Another fascinating element of this story is how quickly information now spreads throughout financial markets. A single interview published by a respected industry publication can trigger widespread discussion across social media, investment communities, and financial news outlets within hours. Investors analyze every word, searching for clues about future policy directions and institutional sentiment. While it's important not to overreact to individual statements, it's equally important to recognize why market participants pay attention. Comments from individuals connected to major financial institutions often provide valuable insight into how large organizations are thinking about emerging industries, even if those comments don't represent official company positions. As always, separating confirmed facts from speculation remains essential. The reported comments describe one individual's assessment regarding the probability of legislation passing and observations about international regulatory developments. They do not guarantee future outcomes or predict specific market movements. Legislative processes are inherently unpredictable, and political negotiations can change rapidly. Likewise, the pace of regulatory progress varies significantly across different countries. Investors should continue following credible sources, official announcements, and legislative updates rather than relying solely on rumors circulating online. In fast-moving markets like cryptocurrency, accurate information becomes one of the most valuable assets an investor can have.